It's 6:12 again. I apologize, we're starting late, but there was a finance committee meeting which went a little long. So ideally we would have a short meeting tonight. We'll see how it goes. We're getting started at 6:13, Amy. Okay. So we're going to review the minutes. Open it up. I think we'll do that and then open it up for public comments, then do our work session, and then we can have time for public comments again at the end, hopefully. We do not have some folks who are, some of our members not here. We don't have Ricky and Ian, so two Brattleboro folks. And Mark is helping himself. Other than that, we don't have Alice, but is she not tending to come to meetings?
No, she is. She had a family emergency, so she was away for a while.
Okay, so just to review the stuff we need to do before we open it to public comments, just talk about the vote schedule and process again. Vernon, we want to talk about the Vernon and BUHS separation agreement, which boards have approved that warning. Then the Article 8 discussion, which we've had a couple times, but we really sort of should be heading in the direction of wrapping that up. Ron and I met with, what was the name of the committee? The Alternative. Right, so I guess they are officially the Alternative Structure Committee from Marlboro. We met with them on Monday night. Then we want to review the schedule and just talk about some mailings, because, and Frank talked to you, he hadn't really sort of officially said we're going to do these mailings, and I don't know if you have a budget number for some numbers, but we'll touch base on that. All right, so let's get, Amy, have you passed a piece of paper around?
I have.
Okay. Thank you. So again, it's everyone here is probably pretty tired, so let's stay focused and try to wrap it up early. But welcome, thank you. As always, please state your name and the town you're from. What? Oh yes, sorry. We're going to do minutes first. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I move that we approve the minutes from October 27th.
Is there a second?
So moved. Is there a second?
Any discussion? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, 2 abstentions because they were on the side of the, on the driveway.
We were down.
Okay, so
to
both.
car in the ditch. Okay.
All right, thank you. All right, so please go ahead.
All right, I'm Sean Murphy from the town of Guilford. And once again, I would like to, if I could, address a little bit about Article 8. And it was pretty interesting, as everybody that lives in Brattleboro knows, the polling did not take place at Brattleboro Union High School yesterday. It was at the, up in the northern part of town. And there was an interesting article, and I'll just read one sentence by Elliot Greenblatt. And he says, because there was question, why wasn't the high school used as a polling place yesterday, the way it always traditionally has been. So this is what Elliot is quoted in the paper. Many have asked me why we have to pay to use our high school. And then he goes on to say, the reality is that BUHS is a separate political unit owned by the member towns of the high school district, not Brattleboro alone. So I would like to make the comment that it is a commonly held misnomer that Brattleboro Union High School is the property of the town of Brattleboro, as illustrated by that quote. A lot of people make that assumption. In reality, all 5 towns in District 6 enable the construction of the high school, the middle school, and the career center. It is a union school. If representation of of the unified board is 66% for Brattleboro, which would be 6 out of 9, and 33% from the 3 outlying towns, Putney, Dummerston, and Guilford, which would represent an 11% representation from those 3 small towns. It will perpetuate this misconception for all residents in all towns that Brattleboro Union High School, because the first word is Brattleboro. And that's the word and the concept that catches people's minds. So I kind of had another little question, if I could, for Frank. In Guilford, the students go from kindergarten, the way my children did, to, though they actually went through middle school, but now they only go to 6th grade. So that's 7 years at Guilford School, Guilford Elementary School. Then they enter BAM's Brattleboro Area Middle School. It has the name Brattleboro, but it's still, it's not a property of Brattleboro, as is, pointed out in the paper. So that's 7 years at the high school, the unified high school. So maybe a question to Frank would be if one could figure out the financial implication of the total cost from pre-K to graduation from high school, what that actually represents in terms of dedication from the either 5 towns with Vernon or 4 towns without Vernon. If you understand my question. In other words, I think that it's important to highlight that 7 years already is in a unified situation. It already is. So I think it's an important consideration. And in light of that, I think that if you have the representation as laid out in Article 8 in the draft, which is 3, 3, and 3, there's a possibility that Brattleboro will not have the 66% representation, which in a lot of ways is overpowering. Even if everybody's working, in a unified way for every student in the whole district. If you have 66% of the representatives from the town of Brattleboro, it's going to be 66% as opposed to 33. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, so Jody, is there anyone else who's going to want to speak? Or okay, go ahead, Jody.
Hi, just a couple of things. Jody Normandeau from Dummerston. I was looking at the minutes of the Putney Forum, and I was just concerned that we had signed a sign-up sheet that there were no members listed as who attended that meeting. And I think my concern is that your forums, except for Guilford, which I know Beth highly tried to get people to come to Guilford, but the Brattleboro Forum was attended by one person, and she only heard about it because of me. And she, as a town representative, and was not even informed of that meeting. And I talked to the Putney people, and they said it was only on the Putney, iPutney or something, but people did not know about the Putney one. So I'm just encouraging the board to make a better effort. I know Dummerston makes a really good effort to get people to come, and we usually have a lot, but I think that the study committee needs to make a better effort. That's one of my issues, and I'd like to see in the minutes who is in attendance of those things. I want to put a plug in, because I'm not going to be here later, have to leave, for the proportional vote from my perspective in Dummerston. And I wanted to point out also, I hope everybody read in the Reformer the article, I think it was a day or two ago, about the Wilmington-Whitingham merger, which has been in trouble, and that Donna Russo-Savage was down there, and she was informing them to take a deep breath, relax, don't push for a March vote, and come up with something better, and even maybe coming up with individual board not alternatives, but what have you called them, the Articles of Agreement. So I was just thinking that's what we need to do, is still take a deep breath and slow down. Thank you.
I do know that the forums have been certainly shared with, for example, in iPutney, it was distributed in several different ways. So I feel very comfortable with how that was done as the Putney rep from this committee, and also as my role on the board in Putney. But certainly, whatever avenue we can to distribute information, we would enthusiastically take. So if you have additional suggestions, please share them. Amy, did you want to?
I will take responsibility for not forwarding on the sign up. I emailed Barb Elkowski at central office the minutes for the forum, and then several days later saw the list, so I will forward that to her so she can attach that.
Thank you, Amy.
I couldn't hear what Amy said, so.
It was just a miscommunication with emails, so it's already in the works.
So that is already in the works. Okay, thank you.
Jill.
So, today was a historic day, right? We had this election finally end the campaign rhetoric and noise that we've been listening to. So I have this mentality tonight, coming into this as perhaps slightly, well, it's not real differently, I just decided I'm going to speak my mind. I never did one. So, when you guys say, I wish you would slow down, I would like to understand what you want us to do. Exactly, when you say that.
You looking at me for an answer?
You're the one who was saying it, yeah.
Okay. I have been saying slow down for a long time. I have been saying study more options. You keep saying you have, but you have really not spent time on actually studying alternatives. Other parts of the state, even down here in the South, are have alternative plans and have really been working on those kinds of different plans. I wished we could, because I feel very strongly that this supervisory union has been a wonderful supervisory union since 1957 or whenever it became a supervisory union. And I've seen it falling apart from town to town with the issues. People out there, the ones that are in the know, are upset about it. Most people haven't got a clue of what's going on. And I just think there are better ways to do it than the main focus of the study committee. And that's why I say slow down, because I think we'd be better off in the end. I think you're going to lose some towns now. And I think we'd be better off in the end to go to the towns with something that's appealing to all the towns. That is my concern.
I just want to respectfully disagree with just one point that Jody made, and I would not want to. I would like the vote to have happened yesterday. I don't know if I mentally could have handled it, but the sooner we vote, I think the sooner we know what the path forward will be. So I'm actually in favor of having a vote sooner rather than later, because I have a feeling, and the feedback I've gotten from this committee is that you're not really going to be willing to look at any alternatives until you have a vote from all of the towns. And it's only then that we can regroup and figure out what to do next. I am dismayed that this committee has not chosen to go forward by requiring unanimous votes of this committee, because I think that each town would be better able to advocate for what is best for them if each vote counted. And just the mere fact that we joined this committee and only have one vote on it means that our school board lost power just by agreeing to join a study committee, and because we're already outnumbered on this committee. So I'm in favor of a vote sooner rather than later, but if the committee is willing to look at alternatives, then you should look at alternatives, but have each town basically require a unanimous vote of this committee for the structure that you ultimately choose.
So in the interest of clarity. Sure. I'm glad you're speaking, but I didn't hear anything new. Because that really has been what you've been saying pretty much all along.
Correct.
So I guess the disagreement still lies in that, I mean, for me, with what you say, is that I feel like this committee has looked pretty extensively at alternative models. And you're shaking your head, Jody, so that obviously that's still our disagreement. But I don't know that we need to argue it. I just wanted to make it clear that that's where you're coming from when you say slow down. Means that for you, we haven't looked at an agreement hard enough. And for us, at least for myself, I feel like we have. So, okay, I just want to be clear to try to appease people if we can.
Thank you. All right, guys, it's 6:30, so let's dig into the work session. So the vote schedule and process. We're still on track for having a December 13th vote, I believe. We can review that schedule later on, but is there anything new to discuss regarding process and the vote? Or shall we leap into the vote? Go ahead.
The warning articles have been posted to each town that each board had agreed to in terms of the December 13th vote. So they're being processed through each town.
Okay, so each town school board has agreed to that. Okay. So I do think we want to make sure that the Vernon representatives get involved in really talking this up, because and we can talk about that in the, when we review the schedule. We need to make sure that, because thus far they haven't been coming to those meetings, and we can talk about how it's a good thing that we're putting this vote in front of the other towns.
They went out, they need to be here.
They need to articulate it, so we'll come back to that.
So definitely the week of December 5th through 8th, that's the window of time where you have to have a public information session within 10 days of the vote.
Why don't we look at that now?
Yeah, well, actually, why don't we look at the schedule right now, okay?
So we had a question earlier whether BUHS and Brattleboro had to be separate meetings.
And they didn't, it would be my opinion, they do not.
I'm not understanding the question.
Is
The
that
public information meetings, well, I'll wait until it comes around. If you look at the second page. If I could just point out, on the second page, towards the bottom, week of 12/5/16, the 10-day period for public information is 12/3 to 12/12. And so what we have here is on Monday the 5th, Guilford, public information, Dummerston on 12/6, Brattleboro Town on Wednesday the 7th, and Dummerston on Thursday the 8th. We're stuck with your regular meeting days to do this. Brattleboro Union High School is not required to do that, as Vernon is not. So those are the 4 districts that must have public information meetings within that 10-day period.
Jill, what was the Brattleboro meeting you were talking about?
It's Academy Community Night, the biggest night of the year for everything in that school.
And where was the BUHS?
I thought there was a BUHS one scheduled on Monday. No?
On the 3rd? On the 5th?
5th?
There is. There's a UHS meeting, but it's not scheduled as an information session.
Oh.
I mean, at that session, there could be discussion, and it's covered by BCTV, about the withdrawal.
Thought maybe we could put Brattleboro's under that one.
What time is that meeting?
7. Oh, you're saying to combine?
Yeah.
We've already advertised the 5th for Guilford.
It can be the same night in different towns, no?
It can be, but, you know, the Vernon reps have been saying that they will come to these meetings, and I worry that,
So that's fine, so not Monday. Well, it can't be Wednesday.
you can't be Wednesday.
I mean, if you already have one school of the 3 schools, asking all of the parents to come to the biggest night of the
Oh, what's the date of that?
7th.
Oh, okay, so I would have known that.
Okay.
So maybe we can flip flop Dummerston, Putney? Dummerston, Brattleboro?
Well, we can go for a night, any other night that week.
The 8th. We could put the Putney one, Putney on the 6th.
Would you flip the 7th and 8th with Putney and Brattleboro?
We could do that. Does that work for, it looks to me like that would work. Do you,
You're putting us on 6th,
No, we're putting you on Thursday, the 8th,
Thursday the 8th.
and Putney would be on Wednesday, the 7th.
okay, so we will do that.
And do we know a location, Brattleboro? We're just going to say
Well, Academy, I would think, for that.
has more parking.
Yeah.
And it's 6 to 8,
Yeah,
to
that'd be
7?
6 to 7.
6 to 7 maybe, 7:30?
They've been about an hour and 15 minutes. Does 6 tend to work for Brattleboro meetings? So let's do 6, aim for 6 to 7:15.
Okay.
Yeah. So since we have these calendars in front of us, we had talked about a mailing, and Amy put that into the sequence here, a mailing, paper and electronic regarding the Vernon release information.
On the first page.
Yeah, back to the first page towards the bottom. So that would be sent to all residents. And what do we need to talk about that we haven't talked about?
The mailing?
Yeah.
The content would be very simple.
And you were going to work on the draft.
I was going to work on a draft, and I have not had time to do that.
Does anyone have time to work on that draft in the next, 10 minutes or so? In the next day or two?
The draft of what?
So this is the mailing that will go to all residents explaining that a vote is coming up and the nature of that vote that Vernon has asked to pull out of the UHS.
Vernon was going to provide some of that. No?
Yeah.
We had talked about them providing monies for that, and what did we talk about specifically, Vernon, do you like?
I don't know if we talked about it. I think it would be appropriate if they prepared a draft for us. It's kind of a,
Or more than just the draft, I don't know, why are we approving it?
We're not necessarily approving it, we're talking about it because we've talked for a couple of weeks about how we need to inform folks.
well, maybe we should talk, like, if we take a step back and say, we know that we want them to do that so we can move on, but I mean, we haven't really talked about what happens if that doesn't happen. And I see that kind of related because I would think it's a little bit on them to get that favorable vote. But we haven't really talked about what happens if that doesn't happen.
That's a separate
But-
discussion.
Okay. Kind of. yeah,
Indeed,
I
that's a
guess see it
huge
related to
discussion,
that.
but I don't know if that might take a lot of discussion.
Well, the reason why I bring it up is because I think that has to be on the document, right? Because that's what
Yeah.
the document, so I didn't have time to prepare it, but I also didn't feel as though I knew what to say. I would think we would need to say, this is what happens if you vote yes, this is what happens if you vote no. And I don't know the answer to that.
What are you guys talking about?
Well, I know Vernon had a document that they used for the August vote. Should have to find that.
Okay.
To their voters, you mean?
Yeah.
So when, I guess that, can we look at the timing of that? When does this committee next meet?
Next week.
Oh, good, and we meet next week.
It's not, it's, I think it was December 1st. Was the next one.
So if we meet December 1st, that's pretty late to together look at a,
Well, when should this be out? Shouldn't it be in the mail like by the 1st if they're going to vote by the 13th and we're asking?
Yes.
Maybe even in the mail slightly before the 1st? I mean, I think it'd be in the mailboxes to people around December 1st so
So
they
that-
can plan to come to a meeting the following week.
Well, that's, I think, in the schedule.
yeah.
So if it's got to be in their mailboxes, that means that by the 28th it has to go out.
So Amy, do you want to back us out for that timing?
I got, well,
You have 1114 as print the mailing
right.
on the bottom of page 1.
Yes.
Which I like that time frame, but.
I do too.
And then,
My question is whether we all need to like collectively look at this mailing.
Yeah, and then send out paper mailing already. Okay, so it would- that same end of that week, or the following week, we would draft out, or send out the mailings. And then immediately after that, we would start preparing a mailing for the unification vote. That's according to this schedule.
And that can be pushed off a little bit.
Yes.
So if we're not going to meet next week,
We're meeting Thanksgiving.
then we will meet our
Could the mailing just be an informational thing? Because, like, you could ask me, and I'm like, I actually don't really totally understand. the
Well, that's
concept.
exactly what it is.
And so
Yes.
just to come to the information session to have your questions asked versus try to answer yes or no?
Well, right, so that's what I was thinking, that it would be as simple as, this is what is happening, this is the vote, it is at this date, the logic behind it.
And not, I was thinking, I guess, of it as an informational paper that we could have out for people to take, kind of like a brochure, so like just a single sheet though, that they could take and then kind of get a glimpse of big picture what that is and what it means. And then with a thing on the bottom saying, and come to our informational meeting for more information.
I'm somewhat like Beth, much more intensive than what you're thinking, Christina, because I don't think people will all have time to come out to a meeting, particularly at that time of year.
We've gotten lots of feedback from the Guilford folks saying that they need documentation, that they can't come to meetings, and that they need something to look at. And so,
Right, so I think that does not all have to be on the flyer. Right?
I think it behooves us to take advantage of the one mailing that we're going to do, to say, here's the date of it, here's the informational nights to come out to, and here's 4 bulletin points of why this is necessary.
Yeah, well, I think we could pretty easily do that.
I mean, it's not like we're doing a whole campaign of what it is, but it's the explanation of, if this is what they've asked for. To me, the 4 bullet points, I'm just status.
So-
Richard, you're good. It's basically the 4 bullet points are 1, that Vernon's asked to be released. I think that's the biggest one.
Yeah.
2, by law, we have to listen to their request and actually have this vote. 3, the reason this vote comes up and why they're asking is because we're considering a merger. And in parentheses, that vote would be held in March. And I don't know if there is a 4th. And I guess 4th is that our business office folks have looked at it and there's no real financial repercussions. Maybe it's 2 or 3 little points underneath that. This would still remain the same, that we expect after 50 years that these students would likely still come. It would maintain school choice for Vernon, but we'd expect them to come, and that financially the implications of their tuition would be a wash with what they're not contributing. Although we were to the debt payment, and 3, that they would be releasing their part of the they're out of the debt, but they're also relinquishing their part of the assets.
So,
They're right on that?
so not digging into what happens if it doesn't
Right.
load up.
Although that just like, it just poses that unanswered question.
Well, so there are some obvious things we know, right? If one town votes it down, then what happens to Vernon?
Well, I think maybe that's the very bottom line, and after those bullet points, and just to say, for, if any one town disagrees with releasing Vernon, Vernon would remain in the Union High School District, and we would not move forward with the proposed merger that we've been looking at. We wouldn't be able to, right?
Do you want to consider?
We'd have to.
Would it be?
It could be native laws. It could be native laws. Right?
So that would still fall under the agreement we have now, it would have to be modified, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, minor.
Right, my statement would still be correct.
That's right.
Without going into the weeds very
Right,
far, is what I'm
right.
trying to get at.
So my question would be, if some of us work on this and then share it with each of you individually,
We do it.
you want to tape it up right now?
We'll attempt, yeah. You can re-roll the tape.
Vernon has asked to be withdrawn.
You wrote something down?
I'm
Pass it over, I'll take it.
Or you could be able to write it as.
You want to take it?
Were you going to say something, Ron?
I would, maybe you could email Walter Rowe and see if he could send you the flyer that they developed, but at least there's some consistent language that you might look at.
So, but back to timing, and if we all need to collectively be sitting down at a table determining what this mailing is going to look like, or,
So is Walter substantially different than what we just talked through? Would Walter's paperwork be substantially different? Yeah.
Yours was very succinct and well formed. Well, we're done next week.
We are?
do we have X? Right, so we need to make sure that we're, so.
I mean, we could meet at half an hour beforehand.
What time is that meeting, 6?
6,
We can meet at,
15 minutes. I mean, it's not going to take long.
no, it
Do
will
you want a
not.
meeting ahead of it, Amy?
Okay, so let's aim to meet at 5:45. Thank you so much for pointing out the obvious. That is next Tuesday,
Yes.
okay? All right, so who's going to write that up? Who's going to write up a pretty good draft?
I will. Christina's starting.
Okay, great.
And she took notes.
Okay,
I can help out. Here's our board
great.
today.
Thank you, everyone. Now, can we glance at this schedule again? Is there anything in the next 2 weeks that we need to be concerned about, or anything with the timing of the vote, the first vote that we need to be concerned about?
I guess I want to just confirm then that on the 15th is a Dummerston forum, and on the 17th is Putney's second forum? Or is
You had
that?
suggested, were we changing
Could be,
that?
it could be. I took it out, but based on what we talked about a little while ago, we could still have Putney's second meeting on the 17th. I have the 17th at the top of page 2 open for an SU board meeting. I don't think we're going to need that, so you could have Putney's
Okay.
second meeting there.
And that's our, we don't have a meeting schedule.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and do that. Putney information meeting, presentation of that, for instance. Same thing we did before, but just in more, you know,
Got it.
That was another question we had.
hopefully with a video version of we'll see. It's been updated, by the way, the presentation has been updated once again. Okay, Jill, what were you going to say?
Well, 2 things.
Yeah,
Asked Barb today, Ron's secretary, to send me, she did, data, Jody, where'd Jody go? She left. Oh, well, this is for Jody, you can pass it on. That she's been asking for more years looking back. I thought, oh, let's do that. Barb happened to have in a drawer a long ways back, like 1970.
That's all.
So I'm not proposing that I will graph out every year from 1970, but I thought I might do like every 5 years or so for a little bit back to back and see just where we are for trends.
sounds good.
And then my second thought was this second round of presentations I wondered if anybody had feedback or concerns or different ways that we want. I think it's good that we present essentially the same thing at every town, but I don't think we need to do the second time the same thing. So were there comments from folks?
One comment.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, one comment in Putney was that, I can't remember the beginning slides, but there needs to be much more emphasis on Act 46 as a law and following the law and the requirements of it. So I don't know if there was something more specific in that.
Yeah, I think we had said not necessarily if
Not
we're
if,
to do
but-
this, but when and how.
Right, exactly.
I think there was also comments from the Guilford folks at the Putney one saying that they would like to hear what the study committee felt were the positives of it
Yes.
and hear whether the boards were in favor of it.
Yeah, I think actually that was a Putney person had asked each of us to go around and say what
Our concerns
our
were.
concerns were.
Or our
From
concerns were
individual
if we were in support of it as well.
Right.
That was half part of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the second time through, when in Putney,
You
you
did.
didn't have the tax information, I think we should do that.
I would share that. I'm sorry. I apologize. We were thinking whether something was worth talking about.
Is
Say that again.
One of the comments I had from one of our Putney members was that they thought the group was too friendly, in the sense that we were all on the same page, and that didn't make it easy for someone to come in from the outside who wasn't part of our experience, and that we should be aware that those folks who have not been part of the experience are not quite as friendly. I'm not sure I'm using the right word, but friendly was the word that was given to me.
That we were too friendly.
That we were, yes, which made our process from the outside hard to enter into. If that makes any sort of sense.
We should be meaner.
We should be more,
Adversarial.
that wasn't the, I don't know how to take the opposite.
More professional.
No, it was much more the sense that we had, yes, that we had worked really closely together and that we were on the same page and we worked hard to get there, and the people in the audience were not there yet. And so it was a little bit, felt like they were out of the loop. And that we should be sensitive to that.
Maybe we should acknowledge that
Yeah.
as just as a PowerPoint. You know, the group has worked really hard.
That we've spent more time with each other than our families over there.
Yeah.
Here.
Well, we really have been through the wars together.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
And I feel we're a cohesive group, and
And maybe to be fair to the comment, was that because we seemed like more of a cohesive group, if we may not reach out enough to get other people to see how we got there, right?
Yeah.
That we are cohesive and we
Oh, okay.
represent the cohesiveness, but how
so
do?
maybe the trials and tribulations of how we got to where we are today.
We could put together a video of all of our decisiveness.
Yeah, it does. That's why we put a video together.
It just was, the comment was that it was part of being an inside conversation, not rather than being extending out to them.
Well, okay, so what I'm taking from that is that when somebody sees it, the way we presented it at the end, no, this is really.
no, it's good, yeah.
When somebody sees it, we're presenting what we came to as a conclusion.
Yes.
And I think what they're saying is, did we consider something else? Were we always on the same page? What if somebody had another thought? And we all know, having been through it, that we definitely had
Right.
other thoughts. So perhaps to even talk about that a little bit more, we talked about it with the hybrid model specifically, but we could also talk about it with the school closure vote and go ahead and just bring that one up because that's a question people have. The hybrid proportional, the school closure, what else?
And the comment was that to do more of that, we would be more persuasive. That was the argument.
So what else did we struggle with quite a bit?
The leadership, so the leadership, school closure, and the board representation come to
And I
mind
think
as
it's
the big
good
one.
to say the leadership councils, we said we
We did this.
felt very strongly about it,
Yeah.
but we didn't say that we kind of were bucking legal counsel's advice even because we felt so strongly about it. I don't think
Well, I
that's,
think in Putney we did.
we did?
Yes. Yeah, because I said that, I said, one of the things that was most interesting to me was that, and that we actually had to go against legal counsel in order to do it.
And I think that's a good point too, if we don't do it, if we wait until somebody tells us what to do, then we miss that piece.
Right, right.
I think school closure, you can bring that up, you come to a 3/4 vote of the full membership of the board. You have so many meetings, 2 in a particular town, if the school is closed.
Yeah, I think in many ways we sound very rational, and that gets,
I can work on that.
but I think people tune that out, and what we could do, so at the polling places, there were people passing out pamphlets, and I can't remember what's, sort of the so what it was, slow down school consolidation ahead, school consolidation can't be undone, vote no on merger, what we may lose, and I'm gonna just run through this.
Has everybody seen it?
So it's, what we may lose, local connections to our schools and kids, local control over school closure, our children attending a local school, local school boards and town meeting, local control over who teaches our children, property values, ownership of our schools and grounds. Then there's no evidence consolidation will improve equity for children in poverty, will increase outcomes for our children, will save on taxes. Let's take our time and get it right. To learn more, go to infoact46.org. The group is Local Communities for Local Schools, and then on the back, there's all this sort of, I don't know what you'd call it. It's a little bit about Maine's failed school consolidation, and then consolidation is forever, what we already know in Vermont, and then it lists several things. Vote no to find a better solution. Vote no on the proposed merger. So we've actually touched on all of these in great depth, other than, I have to say, property values, which we haven't really dug into much. And that's an argument that I find a little odd and somewhat offensive. But we could say that we've addressed these and talked.
I'd actually like to go bullet by bullet on those specific points in round 2.
Yeah.
I think your PowerPoint actually does address most of
But I think our PowerPoint does it in a very logical, rational way, and this is, fear-mongering. It's,
Well, some of it's outright wrong.
right.
So I think it'd be nice if we just took and said, these are some of the concerns that we've heard, this is what we've done to try to address it, and just take that into a couple slides at the end.
Right.
Right up.
I mean, we could even take a picture of this and say, or I don't know, we can
Put it on.
Right. Okay.
I mean,
So I think that's.
whatever happened in Maine happened in Maine. I don't have any objections about whatever they said here. I don't know.
Yeah.
Happens in many states, I think, right?
Maybe so. Maybe it's like Las Vegas.
Okay, so a little bit of a different approach. Yeah.
Oh, that's important to say.
What was that?
Maine, they just indicated you're all going to do this.
They did.
There wasn't this process.
Yeah.
They said, this is what you're going to do, this is how you're going to do it. And
Yeah. Okay. So, one more time, eyes glancing at this schedule.
And so, Amy, Alice, what's the procedure going to be for getting that slideshow looked at again? Does it fall to?
So the one that I'm updating now is only for Dummerston, which I think is still in the first round. So it
we don't
sounds
make
like there are enough
Right.
changes that we would want a whole new.
Well, just look at it again and update substantially.
It would be substantial, which might be easier to start.
So, right now might be the time, since we're about to go through the second round, is, take that document. Why don't I do that since I started the first document? But I'll do that.
Well, is it necessary to have an entirely new presentation for the second go-around?
I think we can, not entirely, but we can take it to more depth.
And thinking, a number of people who heard about this time would not have been there the first time, so they have nothing to build on. So they almost need
That's true.
We don't want to throw it out.
We don't want to throw, this is chapter 2, and they say, wait, where's chapter 1?
Good point, Mark.
Wise man.
So maybe if you want to do a first stab, I'm happy to look at it with you. I just didn't know whether the whole committee felt like we all needed to look at that again, or no.
I'm comfortable with
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
It's very long, and it's 30-some, so we may want to replace some with some of this new information that we're talking about.
Okay. So you'll, yeah. Well, let's, okay, so we're good, everyone?
And the video we talked
Yes, so Jill and I, in all of our free time, are going to work on a video, a 3-minute video.
about. Roughly. Well, like 1.5 or so, and then subsets underneath that where people could maybe see another 30 seconds on any one little part or a minute or something, and any deeper explanation. Say they would want to hear a whole explanation from Frank on how school funding mechanisms work, a lecture he's given to me and delivered in fine form more than once for this slow student that I am. But perhaps that's the type of thing that we could do as like breakouts. But I thought, basically my feeling is that people don't have a lot of time to come to meetings. There's a few of you who are very generous with your time to come, but if you can just say to somebody, okay, here's, like even in the letter that we send out, and there's more information on the website, and people go to our website, as it is right now, it's a bunch of minutes, and it's a bunch of documents, and even me, who's seen much of these documents, or even made some of these documents, I have to search through and figure out what the titles are and what it means. So it's not like it's user-friendly for somebody who wants a quick blow. So if we did a video.
And one that I think should be accessible to the kids. Right. I know my kids are very interested in what's going on, and a 3 to 5 minute video would be helpful, other than, 18-page document.
Because no one reads. The attention span of a human is now shorter than a goldfish.
It's getting shorter all the time. Okay. All right, so shall we move on, everyone? Okay. So let's talk about them. So left is the Article 8 discussion. We're going to touch on the Marlboro discussion. Ron and I want to. Let's start with Article 8. Does everyone have a copy of that in front of them? So what we're talking about is the Article 8. The paragraph in there is about the makeup of the board, what a potential new board would look like. Does anyone want to compare the two for the folks who, I think everyone in the room knows that, but the folks who are watching the video would benefit from a, do you want to touch base on that?
Sure. So the board composition, we've bantered around several different models. The one that we originally have included in the report is called the hybrid or at-large model. It has a 9-member board with 3 members from Brattleboro and 1 member from Dummerston, Guilford, and Putney each, and then 3 at-large members. The communities would all vote on all 9 members. So we would be creating a larger community that way. In a positive sense, the downside of it, at least we've heard from some people, is that these votes have to be commingled, which means that they aren't counted at our individual town halls by our town clerks. They're delivered to one central location and counted all together. So the transparency of local sentiment is not necessarily completely visible by the votes that way. The other model that we are reconsidering is the proportional model, which is very nearly identical to the BUHS model. Again, it would be 9 members, and the number of representatives from each town is dictated by census data. So Brattleboro would have 6 members, and Dummerston, Guilford, and Putney would each have 1 member. And That, with this model, the votes do not get commingled. Every town votes on their own representative. So Brattleboro would only vote for Brattleboro representatives, unlike the at-large model. And also, it would be very clear, their votes do not need to be commingled. They would stay right within the towns and be counted there. So that it'd be very clear that Guilford, elected candidate A. So, how was that?
That was good. Okay, so currently, you've already approved the articles with the hybrid version in it. And now there's an interest in discussing whether the other model is one the committee prefers.
And just for the people not familiar with it, we have looked at the weighted models and different numbers of board members, and this one really, the 9-member board really provides the best match to statute requirements.
Just an example, if you get to 11 board members or 13, Brattleboro is going to go up to 7 or 8, but the local towns are still going to be 1, and maybe another town would have 2. But it's still, really.
Another thing that one of the Guilford board members brought up that I said I would bring to the committee was he had done some research into what some of the other areas have done in terms of this. And I don't remember which area it was, I can look it up, but one of the communities that was looking at a proportional representation for the outlying smaller towns, they brought in 2 people to the board, but each of those people had half of a vote. So it brought more voices to the table, but when they voted, they really only had 1 vote together. And that's how they got over the seemingly way greater proportionality of the larger town. Because in our example then, if we've got 3 outlying towns, you have 6 people from the outlying towns and 6 people from Brattleboro. But yet when you actually put the votes together, it would be 6-3. But you'd have more voices, which I thought was interesting.
But didn't we at one point talk about people coming in with a percentage of the vote?
The percentages I think that we talked about was the percentages weighted.
Same number of people,
Yeah,
but
same number
just-
of people and weighted.
Which is a variation on that, though.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I thought it was an interesting, we hadn't talked about that particular thing, and I thought it was interesting because it would, when you're sitting at the table, it would feel as though you have equal representation from small town and the large, even though when you go to vote. I don't know.
Which is kind of what happened here at the study committee level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, thought it was worth talking about.
For the record, Brattleboro still remains neutral in its position.
That is very intriguing. I do like.
We remain neutral.
I can still say I like.
Richard?
I was just thinking, I had thought of that, I'm just thinking about, that could actually work under either model, right? You could have 3 at large who were still at large without, and they were full votes.
Right.
Versus the outlying towns each have 1 or 2 equaling 1.
Yeah.
That would give a.
Yeah, I think it by going with a proportional way, then you retain your community voting for your, but yes, it would be similar.
You could do
Yep.
It doesn't give more
Is there any
people.
way to work that language into the article to allow a certain flexibility so that you could either have 1 with 1 vote or 2 with half a vote each?
You either have to go one way or the other.
Yeah.
You can, because that has to go back to voters to do.
Yes.
One of the voters have to change it. It has to be one way or the other way.
Because in our Putney meeting, there was still strong sentiment that a model that had 6 Brattleboro folks
Right.
labeled as such was not as attractive as having 3 at large. And it's been said more than once that there's a sense of surprise that Brattleboro is ambivalent, that they would go either way, because it would make sense.
Well, ambivalent.
Neutral, sorry. Neutral.
Flexible.
And an appreciation of that flexibility.
Separate government.
And that was something that's come up in a variety of also individual conversations, that the idea of knowing that the cost of that is giving up your ability to be able to remark that you vote for this one person and that's you, that's
Right.
traceable. The sense that I have from community members is that that cost is worth it, given that there would be opportunities for a wider array of representation.
And I really think the arguments against both models are almost similar, because in the proportional, you're saying we want our town to elect our representative, and I think the alternative viewpoint is, well, you're not thinking as a cohesive all-in-one, but then from our viewpoint, where we're in favor of the proportional, when the alternative model says, well, we're worried about Brattleboro having more people than us, to me that says, well, but it doesn't matter to us because we're all supposed to think as one, so the fact that there's more of them doesn't bother me. So I think it's the same argument in both directions, and I've said this before, but I think Guilford isn't adamant about one way or the other. We see the benefits and the drawbacks of both of the models. Our preference is the proportional model, but I don't think it's certainly not a deal breaker for us, but we just wanted, we would just be more comfortable with the proportional. I do like this 2 half votes though.
So I think I would prefer the half vote model better than the proportional model, but it's still leaves out my appreciation for the at-large members, which I think crystallizes what we're doing. I also, I think in an email to you, shared that I'm not a huge fan of the 2 half votes, although I truly, I understand the logic, but I think that can be complicated. Not complicated, but a less value perhaps of another situation. Did you have a question? No, you're good. I'm going to take a, go ahead.
I just have one question, that is, let's say Vernon is allowed to leave the union, and then it would, if it was proportional of 6-3-3-3 for the 3 small towns, what would happen when they came back? If Vernon comes back to the unified board, then is it going to be 10 members, or?
Just as there would be a vote of the electorate to bring them back in, you'd have to reconfigure your voting. And so if it was proportional, it would be 5-1-1-1-1, like was present. Right. Or if it was at large.
But wouldn't that, if that were to happen, we would come back and actually redo that section of the agreement again, so we could do something completely different if we so chose.
I also want to share that, you know, if this process were to move forward and we were, you know, on December 13th, the towns would move through this vote and we voted to merge, there is the possibility in the future that we've discussed is, you know, there are these towns like Marlboro and Westminster who border us, as well as Vernon, who are clearly at a different stage of their considerations than we are, perhaps even years behind us. And they might, at some point, look at what we are doing, if we actually do something, and say, wow, that's working pretty well, and might want to join us. So there is the possibility not only of Vernon, but of other towns.
Is there ever a possibility if there were another supervisory super school, I don't know what they would be, some sort of another group that was all feeding to us, but they had all their elementary schools together, of somehow having some representation? Say if Vernon, Marlboro,
Yes, so we talked
Westminster
about that,
formed their own
right?
district, could they come into us at the high school and could we give them some sort of vote at the, without splitting off and becoming new boards again?
Yeah, you would, yeah, I mean, because you wouldn't, because there wouldn't be a separate board at the Union High School.
Right, but is there any way to, I guess you could always make an advisory member.
Yeah, no, when I think about this in Chittenden, I can't remember the Chittenden, whatever, Chittenden East. They had a town, it was Heinsberg, who was not part of the merger, but they were still in a supervisory union. So that would require still maintaining a supervisory union. So they had voting power for certain grades, but not all grades. So it's almost like what the Senate is. They maintained their own elementary program. They weren't part of the unified district, so they had no vote on those issues. But for the Union High School that they said they were a member of still, the SU, they could vote on those issues.
Yeah, I think we certainly might end up having that conversation in this setting or a different board could.
That was the MUD, the Modified Union District.
So how do we want to, yeah,
With I like the 2-member thing, but that makes it a 12-person board.
Yes.
It's kind of a big board.
But they only have, yeah.
It's just a lot of
but
bodies.
votes, right.
It's not the voting, it's the bodies around the table. It's kind of.
But
that's my
if they
thing.
didn't
I love the
have a
idea.
quorum, it'd still be okay.
But it's also an intense, one of the things we talked about before is it's a board, it's going to be a really intense experience.
That was one of the arguments that we were thinking is it would give more people to spread the workload out.
And to
Yeah, work on the leadership.
And to work within the school and stuff.
Yes.
It's good. I feel very good.
And it would actually force members to go to other schools too, because both Guilford members wouldn't go to Guilford. One could stay with Guilford and the other one go to one of the other schools.
Oh, I thought they would.
I think that's the easy way to, because there's no voting on the leadership. I mean, they're just helping facilitate and chair the meetings.
It's in the
Still remaining.
Well, so I appreciate Brattleboro remaining neutral, but when it comes down to how to move forward here, don't we have to go around and vote? And you guys would have to vote, right?
we do if we decide, if someone puts a motion on the table.
Because otherwise
we've
the other
already-
stands, right?
It's in
It
there.
is what it is, I guess, yeah.
Well, does that model preclude the attendance of alternates at board meetings, someone who could be read into the same plan as the primary?
There would be no alternates with the present board.
Well,
But the meetings are always open anyway.
Right, but there would be no alternates because they're elected
Right,
officials.
there'd be no mechanism.
okay.
So to get to Beth's idea, then Mark, what you're saying is we'd have to have a motion and change it.
Yes.
Could you guys speak up just a tiny bit? It's so hard to hear you.
Maybe you should move your chairs forward.
I know. I will move to the front row.
Honestly, yes, move up.
That's like, not
Sean also is having difficulty hearing you.
a great demand on the first 3 seats.
I think it's the weather.
Acoustics are not great in this
The
house.
acoustics in here, but I think it's the weather too.
I think it's just what happened yesterday.
Actually, yes, it was today. That feels like
So
it was a
someone
year
going to put
ago.
forth a motion on that? Someone?
We're throwing out ideas, I don't know, is one of those going to stick?
Well, we've talked about this a lot.
Well, I'd like to look though at what another merger agreement does, that all the pieces of that does the half. That would be interesting to look at more closely.
So, could I continue?
Yeah.
So, if you're seriously considering the 12-member board with those sort of proportional, you're talking about a weighted vote.
Yeah.
So when we talked with Chris Leopold about this, he was saying the one person, one vote representation needs to hold up across that vote. So if you just went with a straight weighted vote, you can have a 12-member board or a 10-member board or a 9-member board, and if you go with a weighted vote, then you won't have a variation between one person and one vote being represented. But if you start assigning bodies to that proportional vote, then you created variance between what your ratio is as a proportion of the total, as a census data, and that body. So he mapped out with me a 5-member board up to a 16-member board, and we looked at every scenario and which, where were there variations. And he was saying that that when we get into 15 and 20% variations between bodies versus the proportion, the true proportion, you start to trigger the issue that Mount Anthony triggered, which resulted in actually this at-large voting format, because they had towns like Bennington having 63% of the population but only having 30% of the vote. And they had these large variations. So my point is that a 12-member, the straight proportion is this, I'll give you that. The straight proportion is Brattleboro would be 7.7, Dummerston would be 1.2, Guilford would be 1.3, and Putney would be 1.7. So when you turn those partial weights into bodies, if you just wanted 12 people, it's unworkable on the variation. You have a variation, those numbers I just gave you, for example, take any one, let's use Guilford, because that's one of our, I said 1.3. Well, if you assign one person to that, that's a pretty easy statistic you can almost do in your head, but that's a 26% variation between 1.3 weight versus one person if that person is just casting one vote. That means Guilford would be underrepresented in that case. So all I'm saying is that if you want to go to number of bodies, I'll have to run these numbers for you, and you'll know whether you're getting into a constitutional problem or not in terms of variance. If you just go with weighted votes, which you are sort of advocating, you can do any number you want. And it's just that when the Guilford vote is cast, it weighs 1.35. When the Putney vote is cast, it weighs 1.7.
So you can't do, maybe I'm not following that. So you couldn't have the outlying towns each have half a vote and the Brattleboro people have one?
You could have them having partial votes, but it can't be just 2 half votes for Guilford, 2 half votes for Putney, 2 half votes for Dummerston.
I wonder how that other district did that.
Yeah, what district was it?
So that would be a half each, 2 people, half each, 2. So, yeah, in a 9-board scenario, do we want to talk about 9? Okay, 9-vote scenario. So the statistics are, it all stems from the fact that Guilford has 2,100 people in the 2010 census out of 18,638 total votes. So that's where the proportion comes from. And then, in a 9-member board, Guilford's supposed to have one weighted vote, 1.01. So in that case, that is the one case where you could have a half a vote for 2 people. And because 1 is divided by 2, and you're not going to vary, it doesn't work for anybody else.
It doesn't work for Putney?
Putney is a 1.27. So
yeah, Franklin Central and Fairfield Town, I guess.
St. Albans Town, yeah.
So you can do the weighted vote, but if you do it by multiple people, then you simply got to share the weight.
So they were just one town that split their vote, so I think I'm understanding that because we're 3, like it works for Guilford, but it doesn't work for Putney or Dummerston. And in their scenario, it was just one town and it worked for them, so they could do it.
Yep.
So what occurs to me is that there's all these numbers and ratios and things aside, that there's like two main points that people are getting. One of them is how many voices are heard at the table, which is your main point that you're just bringing up right now. I don't think I've kind of understood that or heard that before. And the other is, if we vote somebody in, how can we be sure that they're actually our person that we voted in and not overwhelmed by some other large population?
Well, I guess the way I explain it is that that person was elected by their community, not necessarily that person that resides in that town elected by the outside community.
But that is the concern that I've heard from Dummerston people in particular, right? That if you suddenly have, say, Amy's running for the board and the votes are all commingled and she doesn't get on there and Dummerston really wants Amy on there, but another Dummerston, I don't know, Inez is running and Brattleboro likes Inez, then Dummerston's voice didn't get to be heard. That's the concern, right?
Right.
So when I listen to this, I kind of try to play it forward, like where does this make a difference? And I'm wondering if we're not getting bogged down on thinking that the unified board is going to be discussing things that the Dummerston, Putney, Brattleboro, Vernon, Guilford boards do now, and that the leadership councils are really where those discussions are going to be happening. And that the unified board, I hope, doesn't only discuss things like our supervisory union board does now. Because really, the supervisory union board that we've all been a part of is very much overseeing and not really hands-on in anything.
Right.
So it's going to be, it has to be by nature, it has to be somewhat more.
Right.
But it's not going to be nearly as intense as the leadership councils. I mean, by structure, but by what we've set up. So I'm wondering if that, I'm wondering even if I think Beth's point to me has more merit than the other. Just having more voices at the table from the smaller towns to make sure. I'm also trying to envision what issue would be coming up that would be so concerning, and hearing Sean's discussions and Ron always of what happens at the high school board and how it's not that. And I guess where it falls apart is because the high school board is 3 buildings, but one essential high school, middle school, it's one location. Whereas when we're talking about the unified board, they're various places. So what types of discussions and what are we actually talking about? What
School closure.
does that make a
Yeah, I was
difference?
gonna say, the one that comes to mind is school closure.
And so then the thought there,
Yep.
the thought there is that Brattleboro by necessity, of course, wants to close all the young or little schools, and the little schools will all vote together and band together and say, yes, of course, we want all the little schools to stay open and that Brattleboro could override the small schools. That's the fear? Yes?
Probably. I mean, not personally, but I think probably the small towns would probably fear that.
But that's certainly not a fear on our boards. I did do some research, and I went back to Senate races over time and looked at proportions of who Brattleboro votes for Senate, and if they're Brattleboro residents or, say, Dummerston or Townsend. And across the board, Brattleboro residents are not, have not only voted for Brattleboro residents. It's been, in the past, you can see they have often given more votes to non-residents.
Happened yesterday.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
3-1 ratio.
Well, so, I mean, I just think it's interesting to look at it from what is the real issue we're talking about here instead of just.
Yeah.
I think there's another issue also in that people are used to electing their own representatives, and it's a big change, all of this, in terms of the school district. So I think it's a little closer to something people understand. Because when I try to explain it to people, I mean, people that have been on school boards, people that have been following this, they don't get it. They're coming up to me all the time, like, wait a minute, so they're gonna let that, and they're gonna let that, and it's a step further away from what they're used to.
So in our meeting the other day, our Putney residents got it. And so I don't understand the difference. It can't be that dramatically different from Putney.
The only thing I would add to that, I think what they find it really to me comes back to the variability that comes in with the at-large positions. That the people I talk to find that very compelling. Knowing, I think trusting that if there was someone, if there were multiple people from Putney who really want to be on the board, there are ways for that to happen and that they don't feel disenfranchised from that. And they may not like the way in which the voting has to be counted in that model, but they like that, they like the
Opportunity.
the ability to have more people, more than they like the ability to be able to account for the number of votes. And I think it's just, and I see both sides of that too.
Yeah.
And I think I've been thinking about, since you said, and for you all, it's not a deal breaker. I worry that for some folks in Putney that when they heard the idea, oh, you mean there could be 6 people on the board that have to be from Brattleboro? That was something that caused
I'm worried
concern.
that we find 6 people in Marlboro.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well,
You're right.
Okay.
Well, I'm thinking that's the mindset we have right now because we have such a diversified nature of the boards. But will, over the passage of time, it not make a difference? Because I was just sitting here pondering, we have 3 districts in the town of Brattleboro to vote. But each of those districts does not elect a school board representative, even though we have 3 elementary schools. We are elected town-wide, regardless of the district. Will it come to pass at some point that the schools and the towns that make up this new district
Don't think about it.
don't think about it? They just think about, well, my school is also, if I'm from Dummerston, my school is also in Putney and Guilford and Brattleboro.
Yeah, I think that's the end goal.
So maybe this is something that we're losing a whole lot of sleep over that in the passage of time will be a moot point.
I also think that we're going to have an opportunity to come back to it.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I think we're going to have, and I don't know what's going to happen with Vernon, but I think there's an opportunity later on to, whatever we decide, to rethink it.
More when you mean like
I think-
between now and March?
No, I mean that if we did this for a couple of years and then another town, or a year, no, but I mean, but at what point does some... We do our task and we're done. But that at some point later on, if a town wants to join the district, another we would go through that process.
But it wouldn't be a study committee, it would be the board saying,
board chair, right?
yes, it makes sense to accept this town.
Alice, can I make one other comment about boards?
Sure.
As long as we're on this, I'm just going to throw out there that Sean is about the only one I've heard of that's interested in running for the unified board. And oh, Ian, has he said that? Yes. But otherwise, I hear a lot of people concerned with the amount of work and the amount of compensation, and that it's hard to find that much time for the compensation offer. Now,
they don't want all the glory?
the rotten egg.
All the appreciation. I think
Anyway.
Aaron had a question.
I don't know if anybody else has heard that sort of thing. Or...
Do you mind if Aaron...
Please.
I don't know if this has been talked about, and I don't have the article in front of me, so what's a quorum? What is a quorum for the unified? Is it 5?
Maybe 5.
Okay,
Like it is in
so-
this setting.
So, so if our Guilford member is sick, we lose our voice in that meeting, right? So that's a concern for me. Just the whole alternate member thing makes some sense in that. And then I think of, it does happen. I mean, we've had 3 members in a board meeting before, luckily 3, which is our quorum, but we've missed 2 people because of family things or sick. Thank you. Okay, thanks. It was just something that popped into my mind and thinking of alternate members.
Well, is there something that says it can't be alternate members from your leadership level? I guess not. That is true, because right now you have another voice. Can we put in alternate members? Can we vote or something?
No, we're talking,
Would that be
we
a
can do it,
policy
we just have
text?
to vote it in, right? That's all.
Yeah, but if we're establishing the leadership councils, why can't we say X member of the leadership council is the alternate member?
would then the board itself be able to do that designation? Just as we do a designation when we have someone, when we have an absence.
What do you do?
They would
Because
have
they're
to
not
be
elected.
elected. Because they wouldn't be able to vote.
So I suggest that we ask you guys to talk to Chris Leopold about that.
Because we can
Although
only
I think we have a
appoint
sense
someone.
of what it is. I mean,
Well, we know that no one can sub in for the elected member who's not an elected. Right?
but could a member of the leadership council sit at the table and join in conversation without having a vote? I have to say, in all of our boards, which tend to be, I think we're all 5, as chair of the Putney board, even if we're a quorum and I know there's an issue on the table that's important, I will not hold the vote. We will talk about it, and so.
I guess you could,
I
and you could call
I do
in
have,
maybe.
what?
You could also maybe call in if you were sick or something, if you knew
There
there
are
was
things,
a vote.
yeah, I hear your concern, and I think that's valuable, but okay, yeah, and then let's move on unless there's a motion.
I just have one more comment, and it's sort of a reiteration of what I said before, but it was brought up about what Mark said. And the focus really, in some respects, is on the elementary schools in 3 in Brattleboro, Dummerston, Guilford, and Putney. But when you put the mix in with the high school, which all the kids come from every sending town to Brattleboro, and you have this huge entity that's really bigger than any of the elementary schools combined, then the proportionality, if it is heavy in Brattleboro, and the school is in Brattleboro, I just feel as if Brattleboro will end up with too much power. I hate to say it that way, but I really feel that that's true. And as I wrote in the letter that I think was read in the last meeting, the BUHS board now is 5 and 4. And there is a big difference between 5 and 4 and 6 and 3. Yes. And being on that board, I'm an advocate because I have the luxury. I don't have to be thinking about every student in the whole situation. I'm an advocate for my town, for tax implications in my town, and for educational implications of all students. But you still have, even if you're coming from a town as a representative, you do have an obligation, even if the tax rates are all the same for all the districts, all the towns, you still have an obligation to be thinking about the finances of it also. And you have the responsibility to be thinking the finances as from your town, exactly. And you know what that means a little better. So
What are you saying, Sean? You think we should not do, or we should do?
well, I like the original hybrid model for that reason, because I think it would give. I've said that I might run for the at-large. Whether I really will follow through on that, I don't know. But I think other people would have that opportunity. Well, somebody from Putney, somebody from Dummerston. So you could have an outlying town that actually had 2 representatives. So, which is not that important, but I think what is important is not to have 6 individuals from the largest town, which where the high school is, where that huge campus, that $57 million campus. I think the high school is an important piece of the picture. I really do.
Okay, I'm going to move on. Marlboro alternative structure. So Ron and I went up the hill, and it didn't take very long, by the way. Not at all. We both arrived like 15 minutes early. Can you share with us what we talked about?
Yeah, so they were They have an alternative structure group that they're meeting with that is looking at Marlboro, Dover, and Wardsboro. And prior to that, well, as part of their meeting, the Marlboro contingent decided they would invite Alice and myself to talk about some potential opportunities with our district. So, you know, we kind of listened to what they were hoping to share.
And Ron, who of them already comes back to our high school?
Lots of them.
Marlboro sends a high percentage of their high schoolers here. Dover does, but I think they're sending to Leland Gray and now Vernon. So
they
not
are
as many, not as high percentage. And Wardsboro is probably Leland and Gray and Vernon, I would think.
Were you gonna ask?
Which kind of alternative, like a red, you mean, or an
They didn't really go into
I
that.
think they're still,
Okay, just some alternative.
They're just kind of meeting together, thinking about what it would look like. Yeah. So I actually brought two documents. I brought the addendum that we have for program opportunities. So I spent a little time talking about that and thinking about some of the programming that we have, like after-school programming and summer school programming, that if we open it up, you know, that would they be interested in, you know, sharing in those programs. Just gonna try to remember the ones that we spoke about. And then some of them were really just specific to our district, you know, like as part of the merger. So I don't think they wanted to hear so much about that. So we stopped talking about that. Just the idea of like universal meals, that one of the benefits to our district would be, you know, only Brattleboro town actually qualifies for free breakfast and lunch right now. Putney and Guilford are close. Vernon and Dummerston are way off. But in the merged district,
getting
all...
closer.
What's that?
Getting closer.
Well, a long way, really, quite frankly, with the free and reduced numbers.
Yeah, that's true.
Putney and Guilford are very close. Vernon and Dummerston are not. So the notion that, you know, all of the district schools as a unified district would qualify for free breakfast and lunch is a real benefit to us. So the only way Marlboro could share in that is if they were part of a merger. So, you know, we didn't extend that. Then I brought some materials from BAMS for their exploratory programs, their Galaxy period, which is at the end of the day, remedial programming, homework support, keyboarding, STEM enrichment, literacy enrichment, and then talk a little bit about their BEAMS after-school program, which is later in the day, like 3:20 to 5:15, so really an after-school programming with all sorts of performing, studio arts, painting, theater company. Yeah, we didn't even get into sports. They did talk about kind of sharing some, like Dummerston and Marlboro.
They may send some kids to Dummerston already.
Yeah. So we talked about those opportunities, and I think they were impressed in terms of the offerings that we had, but also thinking that, well, if we offered some things in Marlboro, would some of your kids want to come and do those things? So, you know, we talked about the Putney Forest, having field trips from school to school, opportunities like that, so it's good. I think they just
bring
wanted
it up. Sorry.
So I think they just wanted to have some dialogue and some potential, you know, some discussion for potential options. One thing that we offered before this meeting was in our middle school leadership program during the summer, we hoped that maybe 10 of their Marlboro 7th and 8th graders would come. And for some reason, there were conflicts and they couldn't do it. We talked about the fact that, you know, if you have students interested in summer programming, summer school programming, you know, let us know. And, you know, if there's slots available, we'll do that.
So it was an exploratory meeting, there's nothing, it's part of their research on what they
Yeah.
might want to do.
Yeah.
And
I think they're-
and it was just Marlboro, it wasn't the whole...
No, it was just Marlboro. And I think it was similar to when Marlboro board members reached out to us early on and came to Putney, I think, and had some discussion about what they were thinking. Now they're further down the road in terms of kind of pairing with particular schools, and I think now they're starting to think, well, maybe we should be looking at Wyndham Southeast as a potential.
And haven't they put forth a couple ideas that have been sent back several times?
That's Wyndham
Oh,
Southwest.
they're not.
Yeah. Oh, it was a nice time. Came to Guilford after that, so
Yeah,
it was a pretty
and that was a
full
big better
day.
time, right?
A lot of fun. And then Doverson yesterday, and now here.
Any questions about that, or? No?
What I thought was really interesting, I know a couple of the board members because I used to work in Wyndham Central. But the new superintendent, Bill Anton, he came a little bit late, but it was nice because two of his kids have gone to band and one is now in the high school. And he can certainly see, from a parent's point of view, the opportunities. And I think he was thinking, boy, it'd be great if Marlboro students or Wyndham Southeast students were able to share some experiences, because that's what they're doing when they get to high school. And so if we could start that at the middle level, it'd be nice.
I actually thought it was, if they were ever interested in merging, which I think I mentioned in this meeting a year ago with them, I think they would be a great addition. I mean, it's a very small school, but they have a lot in common with the other schools. There's a focus on music. Their older kids go to, Costa Rica for a couple of weeks, so that they start that, and they call it field-based learning. And they start that process in the curriculum very early on. So I think if they were to consider merging, I think we would be great for them, and we would be welcome them with open arms.
They have a choice.
But they do have choice, which
that's
is
an
their complication. But 82% of their kids go to BUHS, and they were thinking out loud that maybe, well, I should be careful, I don't want to speak for them, but clearly BUHS was a great place. They considered it a great option.
It's pretty interesting. I went to the Vermont School Board regional meeting that was at the high school, and they talked about alternative structure and how it would work. And in order to fit into the alternative structure, it was very, very, very difficult. I mean, they have things like they were required, even if they sent a kid to, let's say, Northfield Mount Herman, they'd be required for 15 months to know where that student was and what the student's doing, and pretty hard. I mean, it's a lot of extra work that is almost probably impossible for a small school. But I was sitting next to the chair of the Marlboro board, and he was saying, wow, this is ridiculous. So it was interesting. So maybe that, kind of prompted them to think about a different structure.
And I think talking to us is sort of they're checking boxes off on that list of exploratory questioning. All right, guys, is there anything else to discuss?
Can you tell us what the plan is for reviewing our documents and the merger documents with the state?
Well, so there's the vote. The Vernon, as I recall, the Agency of Ed wants that vote to go through before giving it a final review. Is that right?
So we don't even have a date then with them until after?
No, on our time schedule, we have a couple of dates listed when the boards are meeting.
January 16th or the 19th?
Yeah, I saw the January one, so that's not set then?
No, it's not.
Are you leading into asking whether it's time to send the articles back to the boards?
I guess I was surprised at the Putney Forum when somebody said, well, we could still modify this because it hasn't been sent to the board yet, because the last I remembered, we had an official vote for all of us that we said it's going up to the state board, and I was not aware that the state board was not looking at it.
It's gone to the AOE, the Agency of Ed, so they're looking at it. So the next step, not that we have to do this, but the next step is when the Vernon vote happens in December 13th. Then, that's positive, then we would have a scheduled meeting with the state board.
So I guess that's still murky in my mind then, whether we can still make changes to this? Is it already sent?
Has it changed since our board last looked at it?
Right, there was some minor change.
Yeah.
And so it should go back.
Okay.
Right.
Are we gonna highlight
And we
what's on?
only need to ask for comments on that minor change. Because they've reviewed
From our board?
I guess I don't know.
from our
what
boards.
Changes were.
So at last night's Dummerston meeting, there was a motion and a request, that I request that the board, the committee, I mean, make sure that that actually happens.
I think they've asked that. Thank you. I
Yes.
think your board has asked you to do that a couple of times.
Yes.
So,
What are they?
So, to bring the report back to review.
which we've talked about a number of times that we will do that.
So, the latest report is September 8th, which I think many boards have had. I don't know if any change, the only changes I thought that would be potential would be the voting. Article 8. I think everything else is the same. There might have been a couple of word changes, but
There's two September 8th, so this is the revised.
Yeah, this is the
September 8th.
revised
I
one.
don't know which, it just says the articles are September 8th, so I'm not sure which one.
yeah, the one that's on the website, the revised one, is the latest.
Yeah, but I don't know which one we reviewed, the revised or the not revised. September.
Well, I guess my point is there's not no substantial difference.
I mean, I can go through it and just.
Yeah. So we have done that with our board. So I can come back and tell you that our board is comfortable. So that's the Putney board. Within the next couple of weeks, when you guys next meet, you should do that with your boards, all right?
Yes.
I do have a concern of the town, the school closure area, and I was going to send that to Ron to make sure. I feel like we lost some wording that we had at one point that specifically came up in the Putney meeting. That there was a phrasing in there, I know it was said that the consideration would have to be given as to the community impact the closure would have, and that doesn't seem to be there anymore, so I was going to go back and look exactly what we had earlier.
And you're thinking that's from the appendix, because I looked back, starting in May, June, and July, and I couldn't see any difference from what we have now. So it must have been when it was still considered an appendix.
Yeah, I think at one
That's
point
what
it was
Chris
just a
Lee
couple
told me.
words, and then there was a bunch in the appendix that was still in the appendix.
I just want to say that when you talked about that, I think that was very powerful, about the way in which to recognize how a school is the heart of a community, and that would obviously be part of the decision that was. We appreciate it.
So you'll get me that, and I'll.
I can dig through a bunch of emails.
So is that something that we need to discuss before sending it out to the board?
I would say if this group feels comfortable with it, I'll just circulate it, and I'll just add it, and I'll just send that up to the AOE as this is
Was that
revised.
taken out for a reason?
No, I think it was part of when the legal people looked at it,
Yeah.
and it became shorter, and then we put parts of it back into the end.
Okay.
I just remember looking at it thinking, okay, yeah, maybe I was too verbose, but then when I looked for a specific thing like that was really important to everybody, I don't see it.
Okay, so we're going to ask you to put it back, and then that's what you should share. Okay, guys, so we will share it again.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? Yeah. Anything else from the committee? Okay, we're going to open it up for comments, and then we'll call it a night.
I was just wondering whether it would be possible for this study committee to come up with the help of Frank, if everything doesn't go as planned, and if we get to June 30th, 2017, and we have no unification, we have no merger, that what the financial implications, because I read in the paper that there was a 5% penalty, but then there's some discussion, well, maybe that 5% penalty really wouldn't take effect, but the 8 cents would go away. So I think it's important for all the communities to know, what the financial implication would be if come June 30th, 2017, we're exactly where we are today, which I don't think is an unreasonable thing to think about ending up.
And I thank you for bringing that up, Sean, as you often do. You're thinking about the finances, and because I had the same thought today, but I neglected to mention it. So, Frank, could you, I don't know, at the next meeting, but as soon as you can, when we again meet, remind us that the numbers are real and show them to us?
You're talking about the consequences of not...
If nothing happened on June 30th, 2017, that 8 cents, I know that is a thing, but then there's some controversy as to whether the 5% penalty would be levied against the districts or how it would work. I know that they talked about that in Wyndham Southwest. Chris Pratt, there was definitely a mention that it was going to be a 5% penalty, which is about 7 cents on the tax rate, I believe. So combine the 8 and the 7, you're 15 cents on the tax rate. Guilford already has the second highest tax rate in the district, so.
And I think it's important that in our PowerPoint, whether it's in the first round or at least by the second, that we actually spend some time on those tax tables, because that shows the incentive, but I think we could also add, and so this is what happens if we do nothing. And that makes the point earlier on that it's not just a whim of this group that's deciding to do this, it's really legislation that has brought this upon us.
Right.
And I think we need some advice from Donna Russo-Savage about what are the conditions that trigger the penalty versus, because I don't think it's just a straight path where a date comes and goes. I believe it's, did the study committee's efforts merit, regardless of the electorate's vote, did it merit an attempt to comply with the law or not? The Wyndham Southwest appears to be on an initial level that the study committee didn't put forth enough effort to meet the requirements of the law. So, I don't, at this point, I don't think it's, just a black and white issue. I think it's something that we would need to get feedback, but we can articulate, well, if the State Board of Ed or the AOE feels that the community, the study committee's efforts were not sufficient, then I think that is clearly stated in the law. So we'll
But there's also some hard and fast dollars that we will lose, like the small school grants and the transition funds and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, we can help.
Okay, thank you very much for bringing it up.
Angela Johnson, Dover. I just have kind of a comment and a question. To go back to what Richard was saying earlier about the townspeople finding you guys unrelatable because you're all joined together and you were making a list of things to go over. I think it would be helpful if you went around and kind of one by one talked about the specific issue that you had a problem with, and then how you worked through it. And the other question I had is the presentation that you're showing at the forums, is that on the website?
It was going to be. It was.
The slideshow.
Okay. So yes.
Okay, because we've started as school board, we've been putting stuff out on our the community Facebook pages and the school Facebook pages, and that would be another way for us to get the information out there. And it might be something you might want to consider as the study group as well, is posting that type of information on your school pages for those people that can't go to the meetings.
Yeah.
Because they don't like to look for information, they want it hand-fed.
Yeah.
Are you able to get the PowerPoint from our website? transferred to your site?
Yeah, that's what, well, she's putting the link out there on
Okay.
Facebook.
Oh, I see.
So they don't have to, go
Yeah.
to school, and then
Yeah.
go over to WSESU, and then go to the Act 46.
Yeah.
They can just click and go directly there.
Last good question. I'm sorry,
Does anybody know, there's been all this talk from the folks that keep saying slow down, because things are going to change at the election. So we're done with the election. Was there anybody voted in that, these folks that keep saying so many things that are going to change because I am not able to find even the election results today, whatever reform or website. That complains about that.
Phil Scott won.
Yes.
But was there anything specific off of that someone who was elected said they were going to repeal it, and there's really truly this big
I
movement?
know on Phil Scott's website, or not a website, but he agrees with parts of Act 46. He'd like to change some things like choice, ability of choice, but nothing that he would repeal it.
He put out something just before the election.
No, I know, but it would advocate to repeal it.
He put out something just before the election about the advising or advocating that the state board make the alternative structures a little simpler. But I don't know any specifics about that.
And I know I actually ran into, quite literally, Zuckerman when I was visiting UVM the other week.
Round down?
Well, I almost ran into him. But and he had minor changes he said he was going to make them, so he was elected there. So, yeah, I guess, I was just concerned that people kept saying to us, slow down, things are going to change. So was there that big change? Did those folks get elected?
I think the consensus would be no. The law's still here. There's a lot to be hashed through if they're going to make changes.
And Stephen Morse, the chair of the state board, is coming to Dummerston next Tuesday, so he would be a good person to ask that question of.
And I think it behooves us to remember that last year was a pretty intense time of discussion about Act 46, and only one thing changed. And it was a very logical change that had some great discussion, but the vast majority of people agreed that it should change. But it was only one thing. All right, guys, it's been a long couple days, I bet. Can we thank you, everyone? Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all those in favor? Aye. Unopposed? Thank you. Yeah, no.